Sherwin Shimoyle, field representative from the office of Assemblymember Rich Bird. So good to see all of you again. Some legislative updates I have for you. The three main areas of focus for the Assembly members are climate change and the environment, social justice, and housing and homelessness. In keeping with those three areas of focus, we have a legislative package of 11 bills, including AB 3, which is the California Offshore Wind and Jobs Act, which furthers our state's goal of achieving 100% renewable energy by 2045. AB 5, the Safe and Supportive Schools Act, which provides teachers and staff in all public schools in California training for how to best support LGBTQ plus students, and AB 1431, the California Housing Security Act, which helps the most housing insecure Californians remain in their homes when they're facing challenging economic times by providing short and medium-term rent subsidies. Happy to say these bills have made it through committee. They're headed to appropriations, so we're really excited to see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect timing, Lauren. Turn it over. Message from the chair.
Thank you.
And also, I skipped over updates from board in case you had public comment. And public, yeah. Well, I didn't skip that. Yeah.
Well,
Oh, I did skip that. I'm sorry.
thank you, Michael, for getting us started. Apologies for being late, but I'm happy that we were able to begin conversation. So the meeting agenda, if you don't already have access to it, is on our website at citywest.org. There is a public copy in the black binder there. We do have speaker cards if you wanted to submit that to the board to make a comment, you can, but also it's not required. And so the meeting is called to order. It sounds like we heard from our government rep. Let's first, did you do roll call?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Let's go to general public comment. We'll allow 2 minutes for each speaker. So if you have public comment, please raise your hand.
We have a time.
What?
The time control.
Sarah, if you wouldn't mind. 2 minutes. Yes, please.
There's more chairs in there. There's tons of more chairs in there.
Well, then there's chairs.
Sorry, Shelby.
I can grab chairs. I set up the whole room before all you guys got here.
I apologize, Shelby.
That's okay.
I knew you were.
All right, Shelby, when you're ready.
Okay, so show and tell. I own a print shop. I know how to use it. I wanted to show you a clinical study on repetition makes it true. So if you say something enough times, people are going to start to believe that it's true, regardless of whether it is or not. There's things called warnings. You can call me a warning, which challenges the truth. And then there's other things called elaboration, which can embellish on the truth, which kind of, like a good salesman, will make anybody believe what the truth actually is. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is you've got something on the meeting tonight about a tragic event that happened at Hancock Park Elementary School. A woman died. We all know about it. We all heard about it. But I don't want anyone to forget about Brianna Comfort or Jalen Branford. Brianna was stabbed 26 times and murdered on La Brea. And I don't see any CISs written about that. I don't see any public outreach about that. I don't see any weeks of mourning by our councilman about that. But what are we going to do about protecting people in the community from being stabbed to death 26 times? What are we going to do about young children showing up on Melrose with guns and killing people, and then from other neighborhoods? The last thing I want to talk about is outreach, and I've talked about this over and over and over again. I strongly believe that you need to do a lot of outreach, because if you do a lot of outreach, you won't have problems like this and embarrassments like this, and you'll get a better idea about what the neighborhood actually wants and is saying, and I don't think that that's happening. Is that my time?
27 seconds.
I'll just leave these out.
Sylvia, as always, for being so engaged and appreciate
The last one.
your involvement. Any other public comments? All right, seeing no hands raised, we'll go to updates from the board. Cindy?
I just have a announcement, a tiny announcement. So, I already shared with Bart, Department of Public Health has created a youth seat, and they're opening up applications for it after May 21st. I brought flyers, which I'll read. If anybody knows anyone between 16 and 21 that is interested in public health or interested in the healthcare field, they can apply for this position. It's pretty new. I just took this off the website because I didn't have a lot of information about it. But the students, when they're assigned, will be work directly with public health staff on initiatives in public health department. They'll be required to be once a month and it'll last about a year. And it's an exciting new opportunity for kids. So anybody wants a flyer, anybody knows me that it might be interested, grab a flyer for me.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Cindy. Other updates? Valerie and then Michael.
Treasurer update. We're nearing the end of the fiscal year, so those of you who have plans to use board funds for anything, and this is especially relevant to people working on the Juneteenth event, May 20th, which is coming up, is the last day to file an event request form with the city. You can talk to me. I'm sure you guys have that covered when you did it last year, but the deadline is coming up. June 1st is the last day that we can submit a payment request on a vendor's invoice. So if anybody bills us for anything between June 1st and July 1st, it's fine. We just have to hold on to that. We're going to have to pay it in the next fiscal year once we approve the new budget. And then finally, June 20th is the last day we can use the credit card. And then we have a 10-day period when we're not supposed to. So keep those in mind if you plan on spending money looking out for it.
Thank you, Valerie. Michael?
Just wanted to update everybody on the Hancock Park crash. So it really affected me emotionally. I was working on safety improvements for over a year and waiting on the city to do them, and then people got taken control of pretty much where they were going to go. I have intended to hold a special meeting with the Transportation Sustainability Committee on the 24th, and LADOT was going to come present options to improve safety. But we got word that CD5 wants to lead those conversations, so that meeting is canceled that meeting, and we're now waiting on them to figure out when they're going to do their meeting, and I'll let everybody know in case you want to participate.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Ted?
So I was put in touch with the Miracle Mile Residents Association, and we're aiming to do a mini Operation Sparkle for June 17th, target date, with the hopes that it gets a little momentum and we can do this monthly in a variety of locations, but initially it will just be in the Wilshire corridor. So stay tuned, 2 hours, very easy, free coffee and donuts, and we'll confirm as soon as we can. So looking forward to seeing hopefully some folks there.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Ted, for your leadership on that. Exciting. Jen?
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that there's a strike going on, Writers Guild strike. I'm sure you guys have all seen the Writers Guild members going up and down in front of CDS. So I highly recommend anybody who's interested, put an hour on the line if you want, pick up a sign. You're free to march. You don't have to be a Writers Guild member. You just are supporting the union effort. There's been a tremendous rollback in that industry. It's extremely profound because I've been in that industry for 30 years, and I think the rollback might be as much as 60% over a course of 30 years. So you're talking about like a pretty substantial hit to basically a very pro-union force for workers' rights. So if you have some time, just pop by, walk, and you'll be welcome.
Thank you, Jen. David, then Bob, then Hunter.
Thanks, guys. I'm so happy that we are going to go virtual. In fact, at 10 Pacific Park, during our barbecue, all eight of us were talking about how wonderful it will be to be all virtual. Of course, we had a wonderful time. There was crosstalk, and we were laughing and the point being that I think this is an essential thing to actually have all of us meet at least once. And so talking to John Darnell, I guess we all know him for the Power LA, there is such a thing as a retreat. And it could be all of us, some of us, but optional. But if certainly we can't talk about anything on the agenda. But in terms of everyone getting to know each other, other than, you know, that's okay. Shall I start over?
Reset the
Funny
clock.
thing happened to me on the way to the, anyway, so it would be wonderful, I'll look into it more, to be able to actually meet at least one time before we all get together, so that one time of contact, I think, nails it in terms of knowing each other. I think it will provide an easier communication going forward.
Thank you, David. Thank you for looking into that. Bob?
Yeah, just want to let folks know that the Office of Assemblymember Rick Chavez-Burr reached out to us at Park La Brea, and there will be a town hall with the Assembly member on May 18th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Park La Brea Theater.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Hunter?
Yeah, I was a little late. I don't think we had a police rep in today, but I just want to pass on some concerns from some neighbors in my section of the neighborhood. There's been a lot of gang tagging and graffiti on multiple buildings and residents in my neck of the woods, and it's been happening for the past 2 months repeatedly, where buildings have been painted over by the landlords and the owners, and then re-tagged by a gang. And so there's a lot of alarm in my neighborhood about that and concerns, and I just want to make everyone aware here, and if there's a police rep to pass that on as well.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think our police reps looks like they just stepped out. I will just, thank you. I will just acknowledge, as we're thinking about Operation Sparkle being relaunched under Ted's leadership, that maybe the two of you might be able to talk and think about, can we get some budget for some paint, or maybe think of some creative ideas to help maybe foment some way of helping to maintain track or report that. But I'll leave it to you all to kind of talk about it specifically with me and Harvard.
Yeah, and maybe like coordination with some of the building owners. I mean, there's cameras in some of those big buildings, that have been tagged. So I'm just wondering, like, the kind of coordination between owners and the police like that.
Yeah. Amy, did you have an update?
Well, I just wanted to if you call 311, I don't know what the response time is for that, but I think that's tagging is something that you would call 311 for, and they would come out.
I mean, they've reported. I mean, these owners have reported it. It's me just like,
No, I hear you, and it is a problem. I completely understand.
I mean, they're tagging sidewalks.
I do want to move on. I appreciate it's a real concern and, something that you're hearing from stakeholders. Thank you, Hunter, for amplifying that in tonight's meeting. But we have a super packed agenda. Are there any other board updates? Not seeing any hands raised. Then let's move on. Message from chair tonight, it is mostly administrative in nature. I do also just want to take this time as we're moving through the full agenda to do a light acknowledgement. I think I might have skipped that last time, the jitters of being in person, so excited to see everyone. But as we go into our full agenda tonight, just acknowledging that Mid-City West is on the ancestral and the lands of the Tonga people. They were the original caretakers, and this is unceded territory of that tribe. So I just want to pay our respects and move into business. So I do want to also talk about NPG, our Neighborhood Purpose Grant Program. This is our vehicle to fund our nonprofits and public schools. And I do want to lift up that our colleagues Valerie on the board and Melissa, who's not with us tonight, our secretary, did a little look back. And I think it was a really worthwhile exercise. They did like a 5-6 year look back, and in fiscal year 2017-2018, we spent $3,000 of our budget on neighborhood purpose grants. That's about 10% of the city allotted budget, which I think is great. But what I'm tremendously proud of, and I wanted to share with you all tonight, is that in this past term, this fiscal year, we allocated $14,000 to neighborhood purpose grants. So supporting a number of unique schools and nonprofit organizations. A budget is a values document, right? It helps us, say who we are through our resource allocation. And I'm really proud to say that we've helped channel our resources to our community partners who are working with kids, families, and individuals, and wanted to share that with you all. Now, given the $14,000 that we've allocated this fiscal year, we do not have any other funding made available to allocate for NPGs. So I do want to say that for this fiscal year, for this term, we're not accepting or reviewing any new NPGs. For those people who submitted applications, we're telling them to reapply after July 1. And so I wanted to make sure everyone heard that today, that the NPG cycle is closed now. We've directed a lot of money out to the community, and so the new term will consider NPG applications when they convene in July. The other thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of administrative business while we're all together is conflict of interest and any concerns you might have as board members about potential conflict of interest. We all have our training that goes over conflict of interest, but I want to make one thing very, very clear, and especially for those board members who are continuing on into the new term. If you think you might have a conflict of interest issue related to an upcoming vote or project, please contact the city attorney's office. That is the most appropriate pathway forward to get advice on how to proceed, whether that's recusing yourself, whether that's just determining that in fact it's not a conflict of interest. But if you talk to your colleagues, especially in the context of a public meeting, it can trigger a whole lot of other issues. And so I just want to make that point. If you're concerned about a conflict of interest, please contact the city attorney's office. I can help you make that connection if you don't know the contact information or the chair for the new term. And further, as it relates to neighborhood purpose grants, there is on our neighborhood purpose grant application a conflict of interest form. Now, a lot of you have been so fantastic in doing outreach to our community partners, and sometimes they'll list your name in, oh, I've been in contact with a certain board member. Now, that is fine for a board member to let a nonprofit or a school know about the funding opportunity. A board member's name should not be listed there unless it's actually a conflict of interest. So I just wanted to clarify that because, again, I think people want to disclose that information, but typically there isn't a conflict of interest. And again, if you're concerned, contact the city attorney's office. So that was it in terms of my updates and the land acknowledgement. So now we'll roll into our formal business with agenda item number 6, our consent calendar for this evening. So we'll just scroll down to the items in the consent calendar. And again, I'll show these things on screen. There's a public agenda and a binder on the table there, and of course on our website you'll find all the materials. In tonight's consent calendar, we have 4 unique items that we'll vote in one motion, one vote, unless anyone on the board would like to call out any specific item for distinct deliberation. So the items included in tonight's consent calendar include last month's meeting minutes, so from April 11th when we were last together, the monthly expenditure report for April, the accepting the resignation of Madeline Liebert, renters representative, and then appointing Cindy Bitterman to serve as chair of Public Safety and Wellbeing Committee. Thank you, Cindy, for raising your hand and stepping up as we wind down the term to make sure that that committee can still convene. I'd like to make a motion that we approve tonight's consent calendar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sarah, for the second. It's on the floor. Any public comment? Any board discussion? Seeing no hands raised, let's go to a vote, and this includes a funding item, the monthly expenditure report, so we'll do this as a roll call. Amanda?
Thomas Bailey.
Yes.
Cindy Bitterman.
Yes.
Shem Bitterman.
Yes.
Lauren Borchert.
Yes.
Hunter Bergerella.
Yes.
Lindsay Chase.
Yes.
Ted Sidney.
Yes.
Chris Bauer.
Yes.
Isaac Falcon.
Yes.
Amy Goldenberg.
Yes.
Sarah Greavy.
Yes.
Taylor Holland.
Yes.
Tyler Lambert Perkins.
Yes.
Christian Lamont.
Yes.
Linda LaRose.
Yes.
David Mann.
Yes.
Inga Marinelli.
Yes.
Lauren Nichols.
Yes.
Mark Roskill is ineligible. Michael Schneider.
Yes.
Robert Shore.
Yes.
Julian Stern.
Yes.
J.Keith Van Stratton.
Yes.
Valerie Washburn.
Yes.
Don White.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 24 yeas.
Excellent. Amy,
I just wanted to say we need to remove the funding motions from the consent calendar so that our representative is actually able to vote for the things that he's qualified to vote for. I think that removes him from too much.
Thank you for the recommendation. We're now actually, Amy, going to turn it over to you to give us an update on the recent neighborhood council election, a sense of where people can get information, the timeline associated with the newly elected folks. So Amy, the floor is yours.
Okay, now I'm going to imagine that anybody who has any interest at all in the election is already knows all of this information, but I'm just going to put it onto the public record. If right now, as of 5:15 this evening, it still said it was unofficial. But if you want to look at the numbers, you go to Empower LA, click on elections, then click on get results, and then you need to click down to Region 5, and then scroll down to find the Mid-City West numbers. I don't know when it's going to be official. There's no word. I don't know if it's because there's been a challenge or if there is, or they're still waiting for, I can't remember what the date was for mail-in ballots. Friday, so that's why it's
Usually one
official. So there may be some more votes coming in, although I don't think the numbers have changed since the first time I looked. So there's that. And then once it's official, we're going to be, the new board will be sworn in at the first meeting of the new term, which is July 1st. So or July, whatever.
The second Tuesday.
Right, exactly. Next month, June's meeting is the last meeting of this board. So that's all I can tell you. I found the numbers interesting. I don't know,
Do you have a sense of participation?
You know what, I didn't look at any of the, I didn't look at any statistics or any of that, how many people actually voted. I was just looking at the list of candidates and all the numbers of the votes.
Okay. Thank you, Amy, for the update. Any questions? Bob?
Yeah, I noticed that the first Tuesday of July is July 4th. It seems inadvisable to hold.
No, it's the second Tuesday.
Oh, the second Tuesday, never mind. Never mind.
Thank you for your vigilance. Any other questions or comments related to the election? Cindy?
Just for me, how do you find out how many conflicts? Is there a place?
You know, there must be, but I think, I know that not everybody voted for everybody. I mean, it's just,
I'm for the total, I'm just
yeah,
curious.
honestly, it's somewhere in there.
The estimate is about 400 to 500.
Okay. You can kind of figure, but I think that something about the numbers tells me that we need to, just for somebody who's worked on advertising the election in the last 3 cycles, and who may do it at the end of, the next term, is that we need to advertise more about how to vote within the different groups that we have. Because I think that not everybody's voting specifically for everybody that they can vote for, uncontested. Groups like renters and homeowners didn't have, they had all the candidates all won, but they all had different numbers of voters. So I found that interesting. So some people might be confused about that. And so I just think it's something that we need to remember for 2 years from now.
I would love to ask Amy, since you had just led the elections ad hoc committee, is that you and the committee think about some recommendations or learnings to inform the next term, and even if it's just a couple bullet points and things to consider since it's so fresh.
Yeah.
Thank you, and those on the committee that helped, and congratulations to all the board members who are continuing. Thank you for your service. Congratulations. That's super exciting. To newly elected folks, congratulations. Good luck in your new term.
Thank you.
And
Can I make a comment?
of course.
Couple things. I've had people ask me, where do I find the results? And they don't know how to get to Empower LA easily because it's like 5 clicks in. I've had people tell me that their ballots showed up after April 30th, and that's a U.S. Postal Service problem. So they weren't able to vote in the election. I've seen that there were a lot of people that didn't vote in certain categories, and I think that was intentional as a vote of saying that I'm not going to vote for that person. There are certain categories that had a substantial number of no votes in it, as opposed to others that had very small numbers of no votes in them. And to me, it's kind of telling. What it says, is up in the air to interpretation. But if there was a way that we could get ballots into more people's hands, the other thing I heard was someone said to me, I never got a ballot. I said, did you request one? I didn't know I needed to request one. I said, you know how much effort everybody put in to telling you needed to request one? Well, I went to the park instead, but all of my neighbors didn't vote because they didn't get one. So there's some work that needs to be done by not the election committee, but by the clerk in the office and maybe all the neighborhood councils combined. This board sees a lot more votes than any other board, but that's what I'm seeing, that's what I'm hearing, and I wanted to share that.
Thank you for your comments. Michael?
Yeah, I wanted to share with everybody, and I think this might be on our next agenda, that there's a neighborhood council bill of rights that's being pushed right now, and included in that bill of rights is an ask of the city to align neighborhood council elections with normal local elections, which would get rid of the requested ballot thing and also general confusion around neighborhood council.
There's a reason why it was changed.
Let's try
I'm
to
just saying.
eliminate the crosstalk just because we do have several different CISs
Yeah.
and lots of discussions. All right, any other comments related to elections? Okay. All right, let's move along. Michael, I want to turn it over to you to give an update on school safety.
Did I ask you to agenda that
Yes.
position? Okay. I don't think I meant it for the general board meeting, but the update is this board allocated $6,000 of funding for improvements around Mid-City West schools, including essentially where they were hit in front of Hancock Park Elementary. It's taken LIDOT over a year. I want to be clear, I don't really blame LIDOT. I think they're incredibly understaffed and it's really frustrating. The way the city works, when there's a tragedy, action happens quickly, and I was able to, along with CD5, work with DOT, and those improvements were installed last Wednesday or Thursday. So those are now in the ground. They're a start, they're not enough. None of the other schools have been touched yet. And DOT, I keep telling them you've got to do the work and bill us, so our fiscal year is going to end. And they made me a deal, which is if they can't get the work done before the end of our fiscal year, they're just going to do it and not charge us. Which means you might have an extra $6,000 for next year, but I really do want these improvements in the ground. I feel like they could have made a difference in this crash. That's the update that I have. I don't have any ETA on the schools.
Is there any updates in terms of like a convening, a town hall that can be shared?
Yeah, that's what I mentioned before. So the special meeting that I was going to hold where DOT was going to come is now canceled and just waiting on CD5 to advise us on when they want to meet. And I had already worked with DOT on what I think they're going to present, which I think is pretty good. So hopefully they present that and we can move forward with it.
I just wanted to thank you for your efforts to get these school safety dollars in. And I also was rather depressed, honestly, to walk by that intersection and to see, am I correct in saying they haven't put it now? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is completely crazy that it takes this to get the city to be active in something that we ourselves finance and approve in this board. And to Shelby's point about elections, I mean, yes, I feel like people need to engage in what we're doing, and we need to make sure that people understand the consequences of, like, this is our neighborhood. We approved this. It shouldn't take a year. It shouldn't take 10 years to put in bike lanes where we're doing it. So I just wanted to thank you personally for your advocacy and effort on behalf of everybody in our community, because that was a preventable accident, and there are many other, 3 or 4 other children hit around schools in the last few days. And there's over 200 traffic deaths for pedestrians every year in LA. And it's just, if there was a serial killer or something going around the city doing that, everybody would be going crazy. I think traffic fatalities are taking some sort of like active nature, like earthquake or something. And I just want to say that.
Thank you, Jim. I will add one thing, which is if you guys want to take frustration into action, the city is at the tail end, city council is at the tail end of their budget process. The way it works is committees request budget memos. With other interests that I work on, I was able to successfully advocate for 18 positions that DOT needs to move faster on stuff like this, so that's a budget memo. There's a few other things that would improve safety on our streets and budget memos. And then once they get the memos back, they prioritize them, and that determines if they get funded or not. That meeting is Friday, this Friday. If you guys email me or you follow me on social media, you'll see the alert and how to take action. But that is a way to channel frustration into actual action to try to get some positions restored, because they were cut. The mayor's budget cut 18 positions that DOT had previously been awarded, and they need those positions to make things go faster.
Yeah, just want to reiterate what I mentioned at the executive meeting. The frustration that we as a Hancock Park Elementary School community, and we've been there, my daughter's been there since kindergarten, just left this past year, and you have used that crosswalk for years when the tragedy occurred. Our friends use it every single day. Just real quick perspective. Several years ago, prior to COVID, we did not have a crossing guard for Fairfax and COVID, not one. We sent several emails, several meetings with CD5, begging them for a crossing guard on Fairfax and Colgate. Couldn't get one. There was no budget. DOT wouldn't supply one. We couldn't volunteer. As parents, we couldn't do anything. We couldn't pay for it. Fast forward, COVID hits. We're out of school. We get back into school. And what happens? They pull the crossing guards from Colgate and Ogden, where the tragedy occurred, and put 2 crossing guards on Fairfax and Colgate. 2. So we, as reasonable parents, said, this is not acceptable. Is there any way you can, if you can't add new ones to Fairfax, to Colgate and Ogden, can you please pull 1 from Fairfax? And CD5, and I have numerous emails, begging them. They said, we can't do that, because if we remove any crossing guard from that location, they go back into a pool. And from that pool, they can go to any school. They're no longer your crossing guard. I said, we can't talk to DOT? Well, no, that's the DOT's policy. So that happened. I checked back my emails. That was March of 2022. Tragedy occurred 10 days ago. A day after the tragedy, or 2 days after, they pulled the crossing guard from Fairfax and Colgate and put them over. And I said this before, and we're going to say it again. Bureaucracy, bureaucracy, bureaucracy. We have to figure out how to overcome this molasses, this BS, and protect our kids. It was such an easy fix, and I truly believe that a crossing guard could have saved a life.
Thank you, Isaac, for your comments. I'm sorry for what you and the school community are going through, truly. All right, if there are no comments, then let's move forward and turn it over to Sarah Greenby to give us an update on the upcoming 2nd annual Juneteenth celebration.
All right, everyone, so the 2nd annual Juneteenth celebration is coming up. It's taking place on June 18th, starting at 10:30 in the morning and going until 4:30. It's located at the Melrose Trading Post. We already have our Eventbrite up, so if you'd like to request a free ticket, you can go to our Eventbrite and request a free ticket to go. Currently, we have musicians, we have comedians, we have poets, we have dance groups. We're working with our community partners, such as the Academy Museum and Greenway Arts, to keep packing that day full of lots of fun. We're also reaching out to local small businesses and offering those businesses that were with us during the 1st annual Juneteenth an opportunity to come back and be a part of the 2nd annual Juneteenth. We're also working on a live painter that will be there, so please go request your tickets. It's free. June 18th, which is also Father's Day, so bring your dad, get some art, get some food, and spend the day with us.
Thank you, Sarah. And how can the board or potentially our guests help out on the event? Do you have any volunteer needs or any asks?
We do have a volunteer, one that's coming to mind right away. My email is sgreedy, G-R-I-E, B as in boy, E, at midcitywest.org. You can email me if you'd like to volunteer, but we are looking for someone to take care of this fantastic art gallery that's being put up. We just really need someone to make sure that no one touches the art. The art will be for sale. They have QR codes on each of the art piece, and you will not need to handle any money or transactions and all those QR codes. So if someone wants to be an art gallery person, we're in desperate need for someone that wants to stand there and take care of some art. Also, thank you to all of the board members that have been helping, JP, Linda. I also want to say thank you to Mr. Kendall. His group just offered $1,000 and we'll be paying for our roller skaters this year. So our roller skaters are coming back and opening up once more.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Sarah, for your leadership and to others who've been helping. Look forward to that event. Now we're moving to our policy motions, which you can see is a really robust agenda for tonight. So let's start with 10A. I want to move forward with transportation sustainability, and then we'll do planning and land use together. We'll start with the presentation to give an overview, and then go through the specific items. So starting with 10B, Michael?
All right. So this is, let me back up. City Planning just released a progress report on the mobility plan. The city has implemented about 3% of the mobility plan in 7 years. City Planning essentially said they've implemented 67% of the mobility plan because they're doing this ridiculous thing where they say if something has been started, then they bunch it into this single category called in progress / completed. It's sort of like saying you're remodeling your house and you have put one piece of wood somewhere, so it's in progress and it's just almost completed. It's ridiculous. So this is a CIS in opposition of City Planning's progress report, asking City Council to reject it and for them to frankly be honest with Council and public. So I'll move that we approve the CIS in opposition of Council File 15 of 719 S28's report from City Council. So a second.
I am closer to you. It's very close to mine, but it's on the floor now. So I want to turn it over to our guests. If there's any public comment from guests, please raise your hand. All right, any board discussion? Valerie?
I think I'm going to vote against this motion, even though I agree with the broad sentiment that the city has not made nearly enough progress on certain elements of the mobility plan, just because of the way the letter is worded. The 67% figure versus the 3% figure are really not apples to apples. I mean, I skimmed the report, and what the city did was divide the mobility plan into 170 some action plans. Of the 30 that have finite completion goals as opposed to will always be in process, they say 67% of those are completed. And if you read it, that's true. I mean, a lot of them have nothing to do with cross or bike lanes. They have to do with reducing traffic speed and, building things like bicycle parking. But I don't think the report itself is the problem. I mean, I agree that the progress is too slow, but I feel like the way the letter is worded is slightly misleading, and we're also including this. We're accusing the city of kind of disseminating misinformation. I don't think they're doing so, and there's enough actual misinformation out there that we shouldn't swallow that accusation. So that's why I will vote against it.
Thank you, Valerie. Other comments, board discussion? Bob?
I have a lot of respect for Valerie and also agree with her. I don't think I do this time. I don't see this as misleading. but I do see it as incomplete and, more importantly, less transparent. The report, I mean, and less transparent than it should be, less transparent than the city and its citizens deserve, and I see the letter as calling for the transparency that we do deserve. So, for those reasons, I'm in support of the letter.
Thank you, Bob. Any comment, discussion before we go to a vote? All right, let's do this as a vote by affirmation. Any noes or abstentions, please raise your hand. Valerie, how would you like your vote to be recorded?
No.
Don? No? Okay, any other noes or abstentions? All right, thank you. The motion passes. Michael, I'd like to ask that you continue on and introduce 10, please.
So this is a CIS in support of LADOT's reevaluation of peak hour travel lanes. So in case anyone doesn't know what a peak hour travel lane is, it's when the city makes parking not allowed during rush hour and makes that a third travel lane usually. So there's one in La Brea, they're all over the city. Peak hour travel lanes cause a lot of issues. Number one, there's inevitably someone that stays parked, they may get a ticket, but then cars move in and out. Number two, it's an inconsistent treatment for a road. So drivers aren't used to a pattern, and that can cause crashes and inconsistency. And number three, they often prevent full-time bus lanes and or curbside bike lanes, because you can't have a part-time bike lane, for example. So for these reasons, LADOT is reevaluating peak hour travel lanes and trying to come up with a recommendation to council to figure out if they're still needed, which are still needed, and if they can be removed to make room for other uses of the space. So I'll move that we support the CIS in support of Council File 22-1465. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Valerie. On the floor. Any public comment on the CIS? Shelby.
So, you know that there's a lot of businesses on La Brea that are against this bus lane idea. There's several businesses on Melrose that are against this bus lane idea. If a car is parked on the street and a car has to get around it because they're illegally parked, same thing with a bus, and the bus is 10 times bigger than the car, much more arduous for the bus to get around that car than another car is. So that's not really an argument to make. I don't believe that the public really wants to see their anti-gridlock lanes removed in this fashion, in an arbitrary method where they're not really being reached out to, and they don't really have a voice in this. This is something that a lot of people here want to put out and repeat over and over and over again that we need this, as if it were the truth, without doing the proper public outreach. I think you really need to do that.
Any other public comment? Thank you, Shelby. Board discussion. Bob.
Yeah, so I kind of see two issues here. I am in favor of the council file, which calls for a study. I have a problem with the very end of the letter, and I'd like to solicit an amendment. Specifically, I would like the last paragraph to end with the words citywide rather than prejudging the issue, which is what the remainder of that sentence seems to me to do. It makes a lot of sense to me to have the city study the issue of what should happen with those travel lanes. It makes considerably less sense to me for us to take the position before seeing that study that peak hour travel lanes citywide should be removed. So I'd like to avoid taking that position and solicit an amendment that would remove the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 words from the letter.
So Bob, to clarify, your amendment is.
I haven't made the amendment. I'm soliciting it because I want to get Michael's view before formally, in particular, before formally offering it.
Well, I want to do a round of discussion, and then we can revisit that should anyone else have comments, and then we can go forward. Shannon.
Yeah, I mean, I think these, to Shelby's point about whether neighborhoods have been solicited in one way or another about peak traffic times or whether people have been solicited, the reality is nobody ever solicited me about whether there should or should not be peak traffic times. A decision was made on my behalf. So I think I certainly support the idea that we should study the efficacy of these traffic lanes, and I think that goes into whether peak traffic lanes should be eliminated or not, and I think that goes into transparency in government. I also think that these same businesses that might object to having parking spaces taken away might also object to having lanes taken away for peak traffic. So I don't really gain a consistency of argument. I think that what I would like to see is the city study this. I think it bears studying. All these rules that have been implemented and are grandfathered in bear studying by the city so that we can see if we're moving effectively into the 21st century. So I'll strongly be supporting this.
Thank you, Shem. Tyler?
I'd just like to mirror Shem's comment. I think that it's incredibly important to at least study this because it's inconsistent. And to Shelby's point, whether it's a car that's parked in the lane or not, it's difficult for a car or a bus to go around. So if it's a consistent bus-only lane or a consistent travel lane, I think both would be something that should be discussed because we could have a travel lane and a bike lane or just a bus lane the whole way so we don't have the inconsistent treatment. So I'm also supporting this.
Thank you, Tyler. Isaac?
So, I guess my issue is, if I'm reading this correctly, it suggests that we're in favor, essentially in favor of removing peak travel lanes, whether or not those lanes would be used for bike or bus lanes. And that's where my issue would come in.
Thank you, Isaac. And Michael, I'd like to have you have the last word after we hear from everybody to address some of the comments that come up.
There's no motion on the table for that, correct?
No. Ted, did you ever hear that?
I did. I would agree with Bob. I would certainly support reevaluating those, but I think it's premature to take a position before we evaluate whether or not to remove those. I don't know personally, nor have I seen a study if removing those lanes will add to gridlock or subtract gridlock. So I do think it would be important to evaluate, but premature at this point is to remove, or at least to recommend taking a position to remove. So I would support adjusting the first and last sentences to that effect.
Thank you, Ted. Any other board discussion? All right, Michael, do you want to respond?
Sure. Look, there's studies from other cities that have shown that if you remove peak hour travel lanes, it makes the street safer. We're not saying remove peak hour travel lanes and remove parking and therefore put in a bus or bike lane. That could happen. I would probably support something like that. Maybe everyone wouldn't. But the bottom line is peak hour travel lanes are a concept that make the street dangerous for everybody, including drivers. So the reason LADOT is doing this study, it's a precursor to likely removing most or all of these. And that's not my judgment. That's the reason why LADOT is doing the study. So personally, I think we should advocate for the removal of something that makes the street more dangerous for everybody, including those that drive. I would like that space to be used for alternative modes of transportation. If this board, if the majority of this board wants to strike that and just say we support removing them, I wouldn't be happy about it, but I would go with it. But yeah, that's what I'll say.
Bob, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I am going to move to amend. And thank you, Ted, for pointing out the additional language. So I'm going to move to amend the letter to remove the following words. In the first paragraph, the two words "and removing." And in the last paragraph, the 17 words "and remove peak hour travel lanes citywide so we can install more bus and bike lanes."
Okay.
Well, and I think I'll do it.
Thank you. And you can just see where my cursor is. So Bob, that was the first phrasing, and then you're saying in the last paragraph, this section.
Yes, that's the motion.
Okay. Is there a second for the motion to amend? Hunter, thank you, Hunter. I was staring right at him. All right, it is on the floor now. Discussion on the proposed amendment to strike from the first paragraph and removing, and then the final phrase of the last paragraph here. Any discussion or comments? All right, then let's vote on the proposed amendment on the floor. Let's do this as a vote by affirmation. Noes or abstentions on the amendment? Noes or abstentions? Raise your hand. All right, I'm going to call on everyone.
You might want to do a roll call.
I can just do a roll. It'll take 30 seconds.
Okay.
Okay. Sean Bitterman.
No.
Lauren Borger. No. Hunter Gregorella.
Yes.
Lindsay Chase.
Yes.
Ted Siddiqui.
Yes.
Chris Bauer.
No.
Isaac Pappen.
No.
Amy Goldenberg.
No.
Sarah Greeby.
Yes.
Taylor Holland.
Yes.
Tyler Lambert Perkins.
No.
Christian Lamont.
Yes.
Linda LaRose.
Yes.
David Mann.
Yes.
Ava Marinelli.
No.
Lauren Nichols.
No.
Clark Costiala.
Yes.
Michael Schneider.
No.
Robert Shore.
Yes.
Julian Stern.
Yes.
J.D. Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Valerie Washburn.
Yes.
Don Whitehead.
Yes.
Okay, it passes 60 days, 9 days. So is now the amended motion on the floor.
Okay, so then we revert to the original letter, and I think we're ready for a vote as is, unless there's any final.
It's the motion.
No, it's not the original letter. It's
Let it
the
pass the
amended.
amendment.
The amendment passed.
Oh, the amendment passed, okay,
Yes.
thank you. So now, thank you, we will vote on the amended letter, striking, as I said before.
I got it.
Thank you, Michael. I refreshed, but we don't have those pieces of the So let's go to a vote on this. Should we do a roll call vote, I think? Okay, well, so it is a vote by affirmation. Noes or abstentions on approving the amended letter? Noes or abstentions, please raise your hand. Isaac, how would you? No. No? Any other noes or abstentions? All right, thank you. It passes, the amended letter. Thank you, Michael. And the floor is still yours for 10B.
Yeah, so this is the last one for me. This is a CIS in support of the city's efforts to establish a dedicated speed hump program around elementary schools. This was already in progress before the crash in Park Elementary. I'm a little conflicted about this because I feel like the city is sort of saying this is the end-all be-all, or this is the main thrust of the effort, and I don't think speed humps are a solution to really solve this. I think we need road redesign. But I think it can't hurt, and so, yeah, I'll move that we support the CIS and support of Council File 230306. Is there a second? I'll second.
Thank you, Isaac. It's on the floor. Any comments from our guest, Shelby?
My neighbors have been waiting a very, very long time to get speed humps installed. It's my understanding that the speed hump program for the neighborhoods is like on a first come, first served basis. So when the ability to request one opened up last year, we got on the list, we did everything we needed to do, and we're still waiting for it. To prioritize the schools over the neighborhoods because of the accident that happened seems to be a little disingenuous, because from my understanding, the driver suffered a medical emergency, and bollards or speed humps or metal barricades or 6-inch curbs would not have prevented him, or even crossing guards who probably would have been murdered and mowed down in the same fashion as the unfortunate woman was, would have stopped a guy suffering a medical emergency, suffering from a seizure. But getting back to the speed hump idea, neighborhoods have been waiting a very, very long time, and schools are important, but how do you balance this out with everybody in the neighborhood you're supposed to be representing that says, what happened to mine? We've been waiting forever.
Any other public comment related to the speed humps? We're talking about prioritizing it for elementary schools. Board discussion. Hunter, then Bob, then Cindy.
Just going off of that, I think that it is important to use speed humps around schools. I mean, regardless of that situation, it's still going to slow people down. Normal people driving that don't have medical emergencies. So I tend to agree with that, especially children that may run out and not are paying attention versus the neighborhoods. I do also have a concern about the speed humps in the neighborhoods. A lot of the slow street stuff that they put in is completely useless that they just recently put in. Like, people are zooming around them, like, it's completely useless. So those are my comments on that.
Bob?
I'm in strong support of the CIS. Well, politics is about making choices, choosing priorities. I, for one, am absolutely fine with prioritizing the safety of kids over the safety of adults. And I'll live or die with that.
Thank you, Bob. Cindy?
Well, I have a few comments. So just to Sean's point, I think that the speed hump program has been something that has been in action even prior to the accident to address other safety concerns that have been around in schools. Because as long as I've been a school nurse, this has been around, and I've been hearing about this. So I don't have facts about that. I have anecdotal. I believe this has been around for a long time. Maybe it got sped up, like you said, because of this. But I am for having speed bumps everywhere in front of the schools and on streets. So, that's, but I would like to as you guys know, my priorities are schools. So that is what I see. So I support it. That way the school nurses support it. So, but I would also support having further action with speed bumps in the neighborhood. Maybe we could work on that, what's next maybe. So.
Any other comments? Thank you, Cindy.
I'll close it out first.
Michael?
Two things. So I agree with you. The speed humps on our slow streets were not installed to the agreement that we had with LADOT.
They weren't installed at all. They just put up signs.
They were installed. There's speed humps all along Rosewood and up Formosa.
I'd like to ask that one person speak at a time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we can talk. But anyway, they're not concrete speed bumps. They're prefabbed ones. But the agreement with LADOT, I predicted that cars were going to try to go around them into opposing traffic, and I asked them to, instead of installing one here and one here, to put a line across. So they couldn't do that, and the response I got back was they didn't do it because the installation proved harder than they anticipated, which is just I don't even know what to say. So I wanted to say that, number one. Number two, I want to let the board know that this is a separate pot of money. This is not taking away money from residential speed hump programs. This is an additional $3.5 million proposed specific to schools. So just wanted to let everyone know that.
Thank you, Michael. And I just want to recognize myself because for those people who were with us at the last executive council meeting on April 27th, and Isaac and Cindy and Sharon and others, thank you for being there. It was very emotional to hear from the parents in the wake of that tragedy, and I appreciate transportation and sustainability providing the CIS another way for us to say, in some ways we heard you in terms of the parents, and anything that we can do to help with safety and mitigating traffic violence is really important. So thanks to transportation, I'm supporting it for that reason. I just feel like I looked so many parents in the eyes that night and feel like this is the least that we can do. So thank you very much. Let's go to a vote. Let's do it as a vote by affirmation. No's or abstentions? No's or abstentions? All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so I just want to say before we go to the planning and land use CISs and letters, for 10E, Dre's not here, Melissa's not here. They were planning to present on this and said that they're okay with tabling. However, if there is a member of the Outreach and Civic Engagement Committee who would like to present on this motion, then we'll hear it tonight. Otherwise, we'll hear it in June.
I can fill everyone in on it if you'd like to.
Okay.
Okay, so the reason why we're bringing up this bylaw, who we're asking for a change, is because when you're in a term with an election like we currently are right now, we cannot fill any vacancies that we have because we're not allowed to be able to post an election.
July 1st. But if I'm not wrong, but are you trying to make it like 19 then? Or are you trying to make it the majority of the board members present?
The majority of the board in general, we just have a very specific number. And for example, Madeline resigned today, although we still have to hit 18 to be in quorum, even though we're no longer 37.
So you want to make it so maybe like 16 or 15 or 14?
I don't want to define the number.
No, I think that's dynamic.
Just say simple majority.
And a majority of the board members in office, whatever that number happens to be.
Okay,
So if there are vacancies and they don't count one way or the other.
Unfortunately, you can't do that. With the board, however many seats you have in total, which is 35 or 36, has to be at least 18 or above, or else you don't have a majority of the board actually representing you for votes. So it has to be either 18 or higher.
Despite vacancies, if they're.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, unfortunately, for the short term.
That's why plans usually exhaust other use.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Don, I'm glad that you were here.
I was gonna raise my hand anyway, but I was just waiting to hear because I couldn't let it.
Thank you. Well, that was practical though, outreach with the education. Glad discussion. Thank you, thank you. All right, now we are going to hear a number of motions. Yes. Yes, Charles.
And also, you know, it's, you know, they don't allow, you can't have a floating quorum in the bylaws. It's got to be like a direct, you know, a certain number. I mean, you know, that's, earlier on, it was, all right, it just seemed to be it was okay, and then it was sort of clarified that there had to be, that there definitely had to be a certain number going forward, and so that's why I would oppose this.
I appreciate that, Charles.
I mean,
Thank you for your expertise, appreciate it. We are now going to move forward with planning and land use, and so I'll turn it over to Lauren and Chris. I know there's a guest speaker to help frame the conversation tonight in these various motions. So Chris, you want to introduce the guest speaker?
Yeah, can I bring in Constantine Hatcher from CAU? I don't know if I'm saying it, but present on the bills that we wrote our case for. Can you?
Would you like to sit here? I can give you the HDMI cord.
Does anyone have a?
We have an adapter, a Mac adapter,
Sure.
but we gotta find it, right?
Otherwise, we'll just go through and I can just kind of talk.
If you want to kind of just start to kind of verbally just kind of contextualize it right now, we'll get the adapter and I'll give you my seat here.
All right, let's just go ahead and call an audible. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Constantine Hatcher. I'm the Senior Director of Community Impact for California YIMBY. I'm actually very familiar with this area. My adult sons went to Third Street Elementary, so we were frequent participants over here at the park. I was actually just here the other day. My niece plays soccer and basketball here. The 3-year-olds are getting ready to do a little dribble, and then it's going to be super cute. But anyway, I mean, any opportunity for my really shamelessly. But thanks for having me. I'm with California YIMBY. We're a statewide advocacy organization that is dedicated to creating a California that's affordable place to live, work, and raise a family. And someone that actually has lived, raised a family right down the street. I've seen kind of changes that have flows in this community and across the city, and also how the crisis has impacted those that are less fortunate and those that are on the brink, really being exacerbated, crushed by overcrowding housing costs. But it's one of those things that everybody's affected, right? Even if you think you're doing well, then all of a sudden you factor in housing, oh wow, hold on, things aren't quite as rosy as I thought they could be. So I think this is an issue that affects us all. But at any rate, I won't pontificate too long. I'll keep jump right in, and I know you all have an agenda, so I just appreciate you giving me a little bit of time to cover some of our priority legislation. I kind of want to do just a quick overview, just so kind of folks understand where we are in the legislative process right now. Most bills have gone through their first house right now. Everything is either set to go to floor votes in the first house, which means that they've cleared all the policy committees, and they don't have to go to the appropriations committee, and now they're just ready for the first, whether it's the assembly or the senate, to come stand up and do all the voting and move it to the second house. Some bills, if they have, it's a pretty small limit in terms of how the fiscal impact for a bill should have to go through appropriations. It's something like, it's less than like $100,000, something like that. I think it's like $1,000, something really small. If you might have that kind of fiscal impact, then it has to go through the appropriations committee of that given house. So those bills are either headed to the floor or they're headed to the appropriations committee, then after which they will go to the floor for a floor vote. And the next house will pass that around. Looking at just kind of the bills that we support, kind of our policy framework for this year, with the things that we're focusing in on. One, kind of safe housing, making sure that we're building where there already is housing, where folks, already amenities, parks, schools, jobs, and not building out where we're endangering, very sensitive lands, where putting people in danger. What we're finding is, often in those cases, folks that can't afford to live in, they go out to where they can't afford. Now we're basically pushing those that are already in lesser means to build in spaces where now they're at danger, further at risk. The other thing is we've passed several laws over the last few years, and we want to build on those successes by, coming back and extending some deadlines, fixing some, making the laws work a little bit better, making sure that, we're always putting forth the best possible policy. A lot of times you come up with a policy, it looks great on paper, then it goes into practice, and then, okay, it's not working for whatever reason, or other hurdles that are in the way of it being effective. So we have to come back and we clean that up and try to make sure that it has the intended purposes. And lastly, one of the things that we're really focused on, you guys have probably seen a lot of attention in the media lately, is really creating pathways of home ownership, and providing, I think one of the things that we look at California Unity is, it's pretty relevant if you notice that I've seen some like the reparations task force work coming out of the state reparations task force, and then coming around to their conclusions and whatnot. But one of the big things is that we really can see is there is actually a very big racial wealth gap. Also, even expanding on that, there's folks that should be in starter homes that can't because there's not opportunity there, there's not options in terms of home buying. And so what that also does, it creates a kind of log jam with folks that should be looking at the housing continuum, folks that should be like now ready to buy, they want to buy, but they can't because they don't have housing options to buy. So now they're stuck in the rentals. Now people that would now be able to move into those, on and on until if you're standing on the cliff, now you're pushed off the cliff, right? So when you're looking at solving like homelessness, you've got to really look at the whole continuum of housing and how can we clear the log jam up at the top so that everyone keeps moving and provide opportunities all the way down. So those are the kind of three things that we're really focusing on this year. I kind of already went through kind of where the committees are. I mean, I think I'll get to talk a little about that, but I'll move forward. I'm just kind of getting to the bills. So first one out, kind of probably the biggest priority and probably the biggest bill and one that's sucking up a lot of oxygen this year is SB 423, which is the extension to expand SB 35. So basically, SB 423, what it will do is remove the 2025 sunset of SB 35, meaning SB 35 is set to end in 2025. One of the things that we've seen for SB 35 is it's been a huge vehicle for the creation of affordable, that's big A, deed restricted affordable housing. Those are the folks that have really been able to utilize that. Use that as a tool to increase housing production. A couple of things that SB 35 is essentially a streamlining bill. It utilizes cities that don't have compliant housing elements. It says, hey, home builders meet certain requirements. Let's get them approved. There's no reason to hold them up. So that's what it does. A couple of things that 423 adds in addition to that streamlining, in addition to removing the sunset, it actually extends applicability into the coastal zone. It's one of the places that we've seen, coastal zone, when you look at some of the, a lot of the recent reports, that's where most jobs are, most opportunity, best schools. So why can't we put affordable housing there? Why can't we open up communities, especially when we're talking about a lot of affordable housing is using our tax dollars to build. We're paying for it. Why can't we want to build that everywhere and make sure folks have access to all the schools, diverse, vibrant community, right? It cleans up the compliant housing element piece of it in terms of specifying around specification on how it those that don't have a compliant housing element can utilize it. Then it also, I think one of the big things that you hear from a lot of the news and the big fight happening in Sacramento now is it modifies the labor standards for mixed income developments to match prevailing wage and the standard that was set in last year's SB 2011, which basically is prevailing wage have to provide medical insurance for construction workers if it's units over 50. And then some other protections around, you can't build near toxic sites or things like that. Those environmental concerns, like, obviously we don't want to build in places that are toxic or other environmental impacts that we don't want. So, the key thing here is that they have to pass all the local rules, the basic rules. So this just streamlines it so you can't add additional barriers. But that's one of the big fights that's happening in Sacramento now between carpenters and a couple of other actually members of the building trades have broken off the laborers. As an example, and said, hey, wait a minute, we need more housing. Our members are suffering, and this also is a vehicle to provide really great jobs, good paying jobs that now our members can hopefully be able to afford to live in. If we don't build housing, then nobody wins. So we're okay with, we don't need skilled and trained language, because one, that causes our costs to go up substantially. Also, we just don't have the skilled and trained workforce here in California to build all the homes. I think there's something like, let's say around 300,000 deficit in terms of construction workers because of what happened in coming out of the 2008 recession. A lot of construction workers moved out of state because building wasn't happening because of that, the kind of collapse in the housing market at that time. So this removes that barrier, make it a little bit cheaper, but also still providing good quality jobs where we're not going to have those like wage abuses that you sometimes see in construction, but you often see in the construction industry. Any questions on 423?
I just want to clarify, Constantine, and maybe Lauren and Chris can give some context here. We're not considering in any of the letters tonight that bill or workforce issues. So could you help Chris and Lauren kind of tie together the letters and the presentation?
Yeah, Chris, if you want to go, I'll just say quickly, there was a mistake made in SB 423. Did pass the plot committee, but it is not on tonight's agenda, so it'll be on the next.
Okay.
So the following 6 one.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, so sorry. You want to summarize or what?
If it's not hard. I'm going to go on to the next one, Constantine, if you can have other context for the other bills that we're considering tonight.
I'll go to the next one. Sorry, I didn't even wait for this. All right, so I'll talk about SB 450. This is kind of in that. talked about these, and
Yeah.
976, okay, 835 for 294.
And I think it'd be helpful to look at really a high level, and then when we get to each motion, there might be questions that, you know, the further detail might be really illuminating for the conversation, but if you can kind of frame at a high level.
Sure. All right, so moving right to 976. Assembly Bill 976 by Assembly Member King. This one extends incentives for accessory dwelling units, granny flats, you know, the little ADUs. This bill basically extends the ban on local owner occupancy requirements for state ADU law. So previous to 881, there was, many cities had, you had to live in either the ADU or the house in order to build an ADU. Now, the AB 881 by Bloom said, no, wait, hold on. We have a housing crisis. Like, this is a great way to build naturally occurring affordable housing that fits neatly in the communities. It's not going to change a whole lot, but it's a great way to build additional housing, right? And so, what 976 does is it just extends that indefinitely. There's a little bit of still some work going on back and forth exactly if it's going to extend it out another 10 years or is it going to permanently sunset. Right now, it's extending it indefinitely. I think one of the key pieces of this, the Turner Center for Housing Innovation, which is an independent housing research firm that's widely respected. One of their studies that the ability to offer ADUs for rent is one of the main reasons folks build those types of homes. So it's just it's good for homeowners, it's good for renters, because it offers an opportunity to get in the big neighborhoods and more affordable housing. And it just makes sense that we don't want to limit it to just folks that have to live in the house. But if you have a home that you already have for rent, you want to build another ADU there in that home or a multifamily home and add another ADU to that within the legal framework and standards, you should be able to do that. So that's 976.
And let's just stop there why that's fresh in everyone's mind. Are you able to follow with us for like, probably?
No way, no.
Okay, thank you. Because given your subject matter expertise, I'd like to, your presentation leads right into the motion for the letter, and if people have questions, you can ask about it, and then move on to the next one.
I'm at your disposal.
All right, Commissioner Warren, would you like to make a motion for the letter for AB 976?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the draft letter in support of AB 976.
Thank you, Isaac. All right, it's on the floor now. Any public comment on the letter? Any board discussion? I just have one question. Do you have a sense of, for homeowners who've built ADUs, how many of them are actually renting it to people? I know a lot of lawyers do guest houses or home offices. So do you have any sense of that?
Like in terms of the percentage, no. What I can say is that since the ADU bills, there was about a series of about 3 or 4 ADU bills that came about 2018, if I'm correct. It's been many cities where it have been really difficult to get multifamily housing. There's been an explosion of ADU permits, so it has been a really good, in reality, it has worked as a great tool to provide additional housing. So like how many of those, I don't have the numbers on how many are owner occupancy versus rental, additional rental units on a rental property. But I think at the end of the day, the real question is, do we want to have opportunities for folks to like, common sense ways to create more housing that we know we desperately need. We know we need housing. This is just a great way to do it. Why limit just folks that have to live in the neighborhood? Why not offer and open that up to a broader section of folks that want to build the housing?
Thank you. Michael?
So the city limits our ability to send letters beyond really the city development. So I just want to point out that we should probably move the CCs to the state senators and some members. I would still vote for it. I don't really care who's in the letter to state representatives. The principle behind that is that the city decides, the city council decides, and the mayor which bills they want to support or oppose, and the individual neighborhood council shouldn't be seen as interfering with that. I'm not saying I agree with that or not. Again, I'd still vote for it, but we should probably move the CCs if we want to be compliant with the city's intent for neighborhood councils. So the goal is to ask, and I think it says at the bottom paragraph, if you scroll down, the goal is to ask the city council to take a support position, which would then unleash the city's lobbyists in Sacramento and give the city an official support position, which doesn't happen in Sacramento. So the letter's fine as it is, but I've moved the CCs.
I have a question.
Yeah.
We've done this a lot before, so is this new guidance, Michael? Like
It's always been this way. I don't think I've never drafted a letter that CC.
Dre has definitely drafted several letters.
Dre's violating.
So,
I mean, I guess the reality, and again, John, I'm happy that you're here because I feel like, you know, that unless this nullifies or validates our letter, then just leave it as is. But John, in terms of encouraging our city council members to support state legislation, is it problematic to have CCs from our, you know, from the state representatives?
To the state.
The job of the neighborhood council is for the charter is to advise the city. So if you're sending a letter to your, Michael's right, if you're sending a letter to anybody outside the city, the county, school district, state representatives, you're supposed to go to your council member or not directly to them. That's basically, it's in the charter, because the neighborhood council is supposed to advise the city.
And this letter, just to clarify, sorry, John, to pull you in, but your council is really so valued here. It's addressed to council member Yaroslavsky. And then it's just CC, so I'm not trying to, you know, but I'm trying to understand, you know, it is addressed to the city council member.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, it's just, you're also then sending it to, you know, state legislators, and it's not the position of the city. Your job is to advise the city council and departments, and then when they have a position, then it goes to them. I mean.
We can clean this up. Let's
I
continue to
will,
work
I will
this
say
out.
that, a couple things. One, that's neighborhood councils, community groups have, you know, registered support, volunteer groups. I've seen LAC neighborhood councils support different bills, or opposed. I think the other thing is just similar, you know, city council members will, in the picture I've seen, they individually support a bill that the council does not support. So I don't know, but I'm not trying to, I've seen.
Thank you, Councilman. I mean, we can certainly make an amendment and clean that up if it's a concern, but let's continue the board discussion on the contents of the letter. Bob?
I'm fine with the contents of the letter. As to the other issue, it's my understanding that, assuming that we approve the letter is then a matter of public record, correct?
That's right.
And as a matter of public record, every member of the public has access to that letter, correct? And that includes, well, you know, any individual member of this council, acting, of course, as an individual, not as a member of the council, right?
Right.
And therefore, any individual member of the council who is so inclined is at liberty to send a copy of the letter
Sure.
to all of those assembly members and senators, right?
Sure. It doesn't prohibit that.
I just want to point out one thing. I don't really care if we CC them. We technically shouldn't. But I also think it doesn't really help our cause. Because if we're supporting something the city opposes, that our voice doesn't matter. And if we're supporting something and vice versa, the best thing we can do is to get our council and maybe other neighborhood councils to ask our city council to take an official position. Because honestly, as one neighborhood council out of 99, compared to the city's army of lobbyists, there's a huge difference. So if we actually want this to have effect, the best thing we can do is to lobby the city council.
I can't actually speak to that. That actually is not true.
Wait, Constantine,
I mean, just in terms of.
I'll have you last word in terms of. Let's go to Linda.
Quick question, what exactly are the owner occupancy requirements? I just want to get a little more information regarding that.
So if this bill does not pass in 2025, it's left up to the cities to determine whether or not they want to have owner occupancy requirements. And so what many cities have done is specifically to prevent more housing for, you know, different income levels in their cities. And some cities are notorious for this. This is part of the disgusting residue from redlining, racial covenants, and all those other kinds of practices. that they will specifically say, oh, we have an owner occupancy, so if you don't live here in this house or in the ADU, you can't build it, or you can't offer it as a rental.
Amy?
I'm just curious if we have done this before where other letters have CC'd to state officials and no one's ever said anything, and it's not specifically, it's not like against our law, the law to do that. And if we've never had a problem if a CIS went to a council member, did they come back and say, how dare you send this to state officials? It's just sending it to more people. And it's still going to the city council, to our representative.
And we haven't yet had this conversation yet, so we're having a conversation to clarify this, and I think that is valuable.
And we haven't heard that
there.
we're not allowed to do it, sorry to, but we haven't heard that we're not allowed to. It was just recommended. So let's hear what the actual legal thing is for us to do. And we haven't heard that from anybody in this room.
Lauren, I have a motion.
Wait, anyone else have comments before we go to our motion?
This is unrelated to this. Are we discussing the?
Yes, we are.
This is a point of clarification. So I'm just curious, the ordinance says that you have to live in one of the two units, the owner, and you're saying that you oppose that? I'm just curious what the thinking is.
No, so right now, what the ordinance is, what the bill will say is that cities can't say, they can't impose an owner occupancy requirement on ADUs. Meaning they can't say, you can't rent out your ADU, or you can't build an ADU unless you live in either the ADU or the main house.
And I'm just...
So this is banning that for the sake of let's absolutely utilize ADUs as a way to do what we call gentle density.
It's extending an existing ban, right?
It's extending an existing ban.
I'm just trying to get a clarification. And so what's to prevent like a big REIT, for example, to come and suck up all the rental or all the homes in an area, then build ADUs, and basically you're just dealing with an investor-renter model?
So, I mean, you have homes being bought up right now, like that's already happening, right? Like we're not. But this isn't like, the reality is, because you're talking about building more density, so you're talking about, if someone buys a home, they're not going to tear down the home and then that's a totally different thing. You're saying adding ADUs to existing homes, so it's
well,
not
I guess
quite
my question to you is that what I've heard, reported from a few people now, is that big entities are coming into areas, buying up single-family homes because they're unregulated, basically, from a rental perspective, and they're no longer owner-occupied. They're just occupied by a big entity, like a REIT, for example, with a bunch of investors from elsewhere. And then if on top of that they're building ADUs, I get the density argument, but it seems like you're potentially incentivizing people from corporate entities to buy up single-family houses, create ADUs, and shut people out of home ownership completely.
I mean, a couple of things I'll say. One, you can't stop people from buying up houses. Right now, there's other bills that are working that folks are trying to do things to identify LLCs, which we've supported in the past and will continue to support, so we can identify that and start kind of helping against some of the abuses. That's already happening now. What we're saying is we have a housing crisis, and that trumps any people are on the street and can't find homes. That trumps the what if, on these kind of one-off cases that if they're buying real estate, they're buying real estate regardless whether they can build an AD or not. They don't need any more information. They're doing it, right? What we're doing is saying, hey, look, let's not, but because we slap our owner occupancy on there, now we can't, we're hamstringing ourselves from building general density in neighborhoods where building other types of multifamily homes might be more challenging. But here's a way that we can do it in a way that some of the biggest, arguments against, community character and all these other things these are places that we can still build this gentle density in communities at a rate that's cost effective and not gonna like change drastically the neighborhood at the same time.
All right, let's move on. I'll come back to it, but let me just go around this way. Hunter and then Cindy.
I just wanted to respond to Sean since I'm a realtor in the area. Most homes are not bought by corporations in this area. I mean, it's happening in multiple other cities across the country, but the price point here is not to the point where corporations are buying a lot of homes. In fact, most of the people that want to develop ADUs are owner-occupied people, are families, are couples that want that extra income. We're not seeing that really here in LA, especially in the mid-city West area.
Cindy?
Oh, so maybe you can answer this. Yeah, well, I was totally for this until Shin brought up these points. I got very concerned hearing that, and maybe you can answer this, that I could see a path towards people saying, you know, you have a very small home, you know, in mid-city West, but most of the homes are very small and very expensive, and then I can really monetize that by buying it, and now I can't afford it, but now I know I can have two rentals because I'm built the ADU, and I could see where people would be more tempted to, and also to not, you know single-family home as an rent stabilized. So I could see where people would even kick renters out. I mean, this is my worst case scenario. So you make
Well,
it
if you construct an ADU, then it becomes a multi-family property and then it's subject to rent control.
All right, let's have one person at a time. I appreciate your.
I was actually wondering. Oh, I see. So that thing.
So the minute you build an ADU, it becomes a multi-family property and subject to rent control.
All right.
I appreciate his expertise. Thanks, Lauren.
Of course. All right, Michael?
I'm gonna move that we amend to remove the CCs to the state members.
Is there a second to remove the CCs? Don, thank you. Any discussion around removing the CCs? Otherwise, I'd like to go to a vote. Okay, noes or abstentions on the amendment to remove the CCs? Amy, Taylor, or sorry, Amy, how would you like to vote?
No?
Okay, Christian?
No.
Taylor?
No.
Lauren? No. Amanda, did you get those?
No.
Amy, Christian, and who else? What do you know?
Taylor and Lauren Borchardt.
Taylor and Lauren. Okay.
Okay, and I didn't get a second in that either.
Oh, wait.
Any other noes or abstentions? Okay. Then it passes the amendment to remove the CCs. Any further discussion, Bob Shore, before we go to a vote?
Yeah, our letter says ADUs have successfully expanded the state's housing supply. What information do we have to quantify that expansion? How good a job has this already done since it's been in effect?
Like I mentioned, many cities from San Diego to Orange County to across the state, this has been actually a boon in terms of one of the many cities reported that's the #1 type of new permit that they've been having because it's easier to build, it's a little less expensive. A lot of times the folks own the homes, so they have a little equity built up so they can actually go about doing it. I think there's been some study, Turner Center has done some studying in terms of the success, how successful it is, and that's part of what the impetus is for expanding the Bloom's 881 to continue to vary.
But my question, do we know how many?
I don't have the exact number.
Okay.
I know that I've heard examples in specific cities that this has been like the #1 permit and it's been used successfully.
Yeah, Amy will be the final comment.
I just
before the
have
vote.
actually a question too, but just out of curiosity, does that ADU have to be attached to the house, or can it be like a separate on the property?
It depends a little bit on city to city, but generally they can be separate detached.
Okay. Great. Let's go to a vote on the amended letter. And so we're voting on the letter as it stands now, which is without the CCs. Any noes or abstentions on approving the letter? Noes or abstentions? You're against the letter. Those are abstentions, please raise your hand. Not seeing any hands raised, it passes. Thank you. Thank you, Constantine, for staying with us. Okay, next up is 835, thank you.
All right, Assembly Bill 835. This is what some people call single stair access. In many cities, you see a lot in Europe and other cities across the country where they, for certain types of buildings, they allow single stair vertical access as opposed to right now you have to have 2 points of entry, and whether it's an elevator and a stair, or you have to have 2 points of entry, which has caused some limitations in what we can build. In some cases, it doesn't make sense in that some buildings that are, I think it's like about 4 or 5 stories within wherever the ladder can reach from the fire department. You don't really need to have the 2 points of entry, but that adds extra expense and less units to be built, or in some cases, you can't get that cross ventilation. You kind of get these homes where you can't, because of this, you have to have the 2 points of entry. You can't build on either side, and so it doesn't get that ventilation, nice ventilation through the apartment. What this bill does is directing the state fire marshal to study. This is really a study bill, so it's going to research and develop standards for single stairway that can then be added to the building code down the road. And really, kind of on a practical sense, it just helps to expand the production of more affordable family-sized apartments and flats by making it legal to build these types of homes on smaller or unusually sized properties in our city. So it's really a bill to really encourage wider use of kind of awkward buildings that, because of the 2-stair kind of unnecessary double stair requirement, that now you kind of can't build like, if you went to apartment, a 2-bedroom or something like that for families in some of these units.
All right, let's get a motion on the floor and start discussion. Chris?
All right, I'll put the motion on the floor. A motion to approve the letter in support of KB 35 with the CCs removed.
I think we need to make a motion to amend it since it's printed that way in the agenda.
All right, yeah, sounds good. And then motion to approve the letter in support of KB 835.
Great, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Julian.
It's been so long. I don't have my cheat sheet of everyone's name on Zoom, but I'm sorry about that. So it's on the floor. Any public comment? Shelby?
I mean, just from an emergency standpoint, fire, earthquake, anything, if you're at 4 stories and you don't have a secondary escape route and you're waiting for the ambulance or the fire department to show up with a hook and ladder, it just sounds like a really bad idea. I welcome the study, but, from an individual standpoint, who's owned apartment buildings and dealt with the fire marshals and talked about, the need for secondary escape routes, it just sounds preposterous.
Sorry, public comment over?
Yes, thank you.
All right, I'm in support of this. I'm absolutely not an expert in fire safety, but I trust that the state fire marshal is an expert in fire safety, and therefore will come up with appropriate standards, which is what this motion asks for. So I'm in support.
Thank you. Isaac?
Is there a maximum number of units that are allowable under this bill? For such
What'd you say?
Is there a maximum number of units allowable under this?
This is just a study bill, so this isn't saying, well, we're going to adopt single stair. It's saying, let's study it, because other cities, fire technology has far grown over the last 2 to 3 decades, where there's single stair buildings in others that are that are safely built far exceed the standards that old two-stair buildings have, right? And so this is just saying, let's look at, now that fire technologies and safety standards have greatly increased, let's revisit this really old law and come up and make sure that we aren't hamstringing ourselves with old, out-of-date building codes. Let's bring them up to date with current safety practices and standards.
Thank you. I'd like to just recognize myself in board discussion, and Bob, I really second your point of view in terms of letting the experts do the study. I think that's the right thing. I will say, when I first read this letter, my knee-jerk reaction or my gut reaction is, I don't know that I would want to live in a building with just one entry point for in case of emergency. I feel like waiting for response is very scary. However, again, this is a study, and I wanted to underscore that and say I'm voting in support of that to let the experts help determine what makes sense. Any other board discussion? Amy?
I just wanted, anybody who lives in a dingbat in this city has one head door, and that's it. So, lots of people live in this building.
Linda?
Thank you very much. Our building inspector is a part of this discussion with the study. I work in the building and safety, it's just, I just wanted to know whether that's the case or not.
From what my understanding, it's the fire marshal will lead it, but it's going to be a multi-faceted unit of, they're leading it because they lead on this because it's a fire safety issue. But from my understanding, they're going to be bringing into that discussion building and safety folks in terms of building code.
Okay, so they'll be bringing in.
The idea is that it's, a broad study to make sure that they're crossing all the T's and how can this make sense given the updated safety standards of the building.
Thank you.
Bob, final comment?
Move to amend and remove the CCs.
Thank you. I'll second that. It's on the floor to remove the CCs. That's the proposed motion. Any discussion? Then let's do it as a vote by affirmation. Noes or abstentions on the amendment to remove the CCs? Okay, not seeing any hands raised. The amendment passes. Thank you, Bob. Let's go to a vote now on the amended letter. Noes or abstentions on supporting this letter requesting the study? Noes or abstentions? Please raise your hand. All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up, we're on item 10G, which is SB4.
We didn't vote on that actual amendment.
You said noes or abstentions. Thank you. Okay, now we're on item 10G, which is a letter related to SB4. Just pulling it up here. Constantine, do you want to contextualize this one?
Sure. This we call our Yippee bill, yes, in God's backyard. This allows affordable housing development on land owned by faith institutions and nonprofit colleges. When I say affordable, big A, D, restricted affordable housing. So basically it makes it legal for faith-based institutions and nonprofit colleges to build affordable multifamily homes on land they own by streamlining the permitting process and overriding local zoning restrictions. The bill basically guarantees by right approval of new homes as long as they are consistent with objective building standards and comply with existing environmental protections. It just essentially will end the misuse of CEQA, which is often invoked to block these types of homes. Many faith institutions, their congregations are suffering and struggling, and they have open parking lots that they can say, hey, we could use this to actually house the folks that are in great need in our congregation and others in the community. Why would we block that? And so this kind of allows them to be able to do that as long as, they're meeting all the standards, they're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. The cities can't erect arbitrary barriers for them to do that. And the same thing you're seeing the same thing around nonprofit colleges. Their students, college student homelessness is at all-time high. And it's a huge problem in many campuses or institutions across the state.
Thank you. Chris or Lauren, would you like to make a motion? Get this on the board?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Motion to approve the letter in support of SB4.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Christian. All right, it's on the floor. Public comment?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Do I understand this correctly, that you want to bypass the building and safety laws and you can build whatever on an institution, on a
No.
nonprofit institution, so they can
No,
go
no, no.
as high as they want and as dense as they want?
No, again, they have to, the design standards by the city still apply. So this is saying that, because what CEQA is, it allows any one person to say, to file lawsuits and hold up a project in courts for years and years. And so what happens often, what people have, unfortunately, and I'm not like opposed to CEQA at its face, like I think is well-meaning and it's important. But what has happened in a lot of, specifically around affordable home development, it's been used by folks that weaponize it to say, oh, this is a way that we can stop affordable housing in our communities. We don't want those low-income folks in our communities. We can use CEQA, we can hold this up in courts for literally years. What that does is, oftentimes, every time if you're in the development, the longer it takes you to get dirt and to build that thing, the more it's going to cost. Ultimately, you might just walk away from the project, and that's critical housing that folks need that can't be built on. Oftentimes, those cases get thrown out, they don't uphold, but you've done the damage of holding and delaying and delaying and delaying and delaying, which is one of the reasons why housing is so expensive and why specifically affordable housing.
So my comment is that I thought I heard you say that you were going to bypass or encourage upzoning of these properties. And we just went through this issue with a property that the church owns at Burton Way in La Cienega, where the neighborhood was very much opposed to the size and the scope of that development, and there wasn't enough affordable housing, workforce housing built into the plan for that. So I think you're going down, if this includes upzoning, I think you're going down a slippery slope.
Thank you, Sophie, for your comments.
It does not include upzoning, it's just streamlining. So if you meet objective building standards, so meaning that the rules that the city has already laid out, you met those standards, and you meet and you comply with existing environmental protections, it passes. So you've already cleared all the hurdles. You've done. You're in accordance with the local, whatever the local laws are. Now we can build it. Why do we need to hold this up? And we already met all the requirements that are asked of it.
Let's go to board discussion. Hunter?
I mean, from what I get from what you're saying, you're basically just saying, because it's zoned for a private institution or whatever, it's bypassing that to build affordable housing on a zoned piece of property that was for a private institution or whatever, right? That's basically what you're saying.
Right, it's just saying that you can't hold it up.
Right.
You can't delay it.
Next, let's go to Amy.
I support this absolutely. We have too many students living in their cars or worse, and the weaponizing of CEQA is terrible. So let's get rid of that. I totally support this.
Thank you, Amy. Shem?
Yeah, I also just want to say, I strongly support this. I mean, ridiculous student housing crisis in this country is unbelievable. Homelessness, these are perfect opportunities, and if people are willing to do it, they should be allowed to do it, encouraged to do it.
Any other comments? Okay.
I was just wondering, so I sort of supported this as a great idea, why it's limited to nonprofit institutions. A for-profit entity wanted to build affordable housing, would they not get the same advantages? And just wondering why it was constructed for only nonprofits.
It's for a specific group. I mean, there's other laws and bills that, like, say, affordable housing, like, for example, 420 bid that we were talking about earlier, currently, it's the extension SB35, affordable houses are using that to help streamline. There are other bills that affordable housers use that are, don't qualify for this particular bill. This is just one that's designed for specific segment of the building, a certain type of building, right? Those that are churches that are, and I think especially because they're churches or they're colleges, nonprofit colleges, they're not necessarily builders. So we want to make it easy for them to kind of navigate the process for them to be able to do this on their own language. That makes sense.
Bob, final comment?
Vote to amend or remove the CCs.
Thank you. I will second that, Bob. It's on the floor now. Let's do that as a vote by acclamation. Noes or abstentions on removing the CC? That switches out of the proposed amendment. Noes or abstentions, raise your hand. Seeing none, it passes. Thank you. Let's go to a vote on this letter in support of SB 4. Noes or abstentions, raise your hand. If you'd like to vote no or abstain, raise your hand. All right, thank you, it passes unanimously. All right, we have 3 more letters to go. Next up is halfway there.
How many Red Bulls did you have in your meeting?
SB 294, I want to again turn it over to Constantine to contextualize, and then we'll get the motion on the floor for deliberation.
I will say for 294, it's actually paused right now, so it's not moving forward this year. So I don't know, if you're more than free to submit a letter for it, but I just to kind of let you know where it is in the process, it actually has been paused, and it's not clear that it's coming back. So I do want to flag that for you.
Thank you. Co-chairs to introduce this, would you like to table this?
Yeah, we can table it, goes on pause.
Yeah.
Motion to table, this, I don't know which one. But
We will table it, and let me know when we're ready to redirect it to that becomes the case. All right, next up is the letter related to AB 68.
So AB 60, I think it's important to note, this is one of the first, it's a broader effort, and one of the first times we have folks that are housing advocates and climate advocates working together to find a way that we can really, that they can both be on the same page around taking opportunities, where we want to build and where we don't want to build in terms of creating this, making sure we're not.
Any advice for
I mean, I have some advice.
Sorry, I'm clicking.
No worries. I mean, I'm not that interested, I guess. So I just wanted to give that context around AB 60 because I think it is important because it is widely supported by housing advocates and like the Nature Conservancy is one of the largest climate advocates in the country. And so basically what this does is it kind of legalizes streamlining in multifamily housing, climate smart areas. These are areas that actually governments have already identified as where they want more building to happen. So this is taking, that's one of the kind of new things about this. It's using the local government already determined areas where they said, hey, we have jobs, services, amenities here. These are great places to build homes. Where we should be focusing and incentivizing and streamlining multifamily housing in these areas. And then it also, places limits on sprawl zoning. So in certain, it's kind of like a build, sustain, and then kind of let's discourage in places where like we don't want to rezone and upzone in places that are higher fire, flood damage areas where we have pristine wildlife areas. Let's disincentivize building there. In places that are like right on the border, let's make sure we're focusing and thinking about what we're building, and we're not building further out, but building up in some of those areas. So we're kind of keeping people safe, especially since we see that our most vulnerable citizens are feeling that need to move out of those areas, not like allow them to move into areas where they could have risk of fire, losing the property, or losing their lives. So that's essentially the crux of AB 68.
Thank you. Chris, would you like to introduce the motion?
Yeah. Motion to approve the letter in support of AB 68.
A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Sarah. Good second. All right, public comment? Okay, for discussion, Michael?
Move to amend in the CCs.
Great, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. Any no's or abstentions on the amendment to remove the CCs? Not seeing any hands raised, it passes unanimously. Any board discussion on AB 68, the contents of the letter? All right, well, Linda.
I'm still a little lost about what this is all about. If you could kind of explain that again, that would be great.
You could explain what means
What AB 68 is?
Sure. So what it basically does is it encourages and streamlines development in what cities have already identified as sustainable community strategies. So about 10 years or so ago, governments went through and said, these are the places they developed sustainable community strategies called these SCS areas, and national environmental impact reports. These areas where we should be building, they're not going to impact the environment, they're close to jobs, close to amenities, close to things like a library, kind of like this area right here. We have shopping, we have grocery stores, we have parks, we have great jobs in the community. Why? This is a perfect place to build a little more, allow more folks to build and live here, right? So we're going to encourage and make that easier to build there. What we're going to take away, what we're going to say is, out there, say, like in the Malone wetlands, or say some of our hills where we have these kind of real fire zones, like say in the we get it in the canyons, Santa Monica Mountains, kind of like in that northeast LA County, Pasadena area, we get in those wildfires. Let's not build up in those areas. Let's incentivize building in there. And then some places where we have the buffer zones, let's just maintain where we're at. Let's not grow out further than where we are. So it's a way of just saying, look, we have to encourage building in inner cities where it's safe, where we have great jobs and communities, where we have walkability. Let's not build way out in the wooey where we're putting people in danger. And that's really what the bill is doing.
Thank you.
So I'm looking at the text of AB 58, and there's something that I literally do not understand, and I'm hoping you can explain it to me. Government Code 65918.5, subdivision C defines climate refugia land as meaning lands within terrestrial connectivity categories 3, 4, and 5 of the Department of Fish and Wildlife's area of conservation emphasis. I'm sorry, but I don't remember what categories 3, 4, and 5 are.
I don't know what categories 3, 4, and 5. I just know that what they're saying is those are the areas of environmental protection, right? And they're saying let's not build where these areas where the government has already identified areas of environmental protection. Let's protect those places because they need it. And let's not build in there and go, muck with our human traffic.
But why not category 1 and 2? That's what I don't understand.
That's a little bit beyond, I do not know, but I'm happy to ask that question and get back to you. That's a little more in the weeds than that.
All right, I'd like to go to a vote on this. Any no's or abstentions on the letter in support of AB 68, and reminder it is amended to not include the CCs. Any no's or abstentions on the letter in support of AB 68? Not seeing any hands raised. It passes unanimously. Thanks all.
And just giving you a quick update on where 68 is, it is going to be a 2-year bill, so it will come back in January. It's on pause now. It's going to be brought back in January of next year. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to give input and give feedback and help even refine and make it bill even better.
All right. Next up, we have the letter related to AB 1633. Constantine?
So basically 1633 clarifies that secret delays cannot be used to circumvent the Housing Accountability Act. So you can't weaponize, basically saying you can't weaponize CEQA when the development has already cleared the law, and specifically if that clearance is in violation of the Housing Accountability Act. So if you're saying, hey, we can't use CEQA to violate the Housing Accountability Act. It's just a kind of a point of clarification in CEQA law as it relates to the Housing Accountability Act.
All right, let's is on the floor.
All right, motion to approve the letter in support of AB 1633.
Second.
Thank you, Bob Short, for the second. It's on the floor now. Public comment? Okay. Board discussion, Valerie, I saw your hand up first.
This is a question for Constantine. I think I'm reading this to say that it's basically local governments cannot use CEQA.
Right.
As long as it doesn't prevent lawsuits from being brought under CEQA.
Correct.
Bob?
Yeah, I go a little further than that. I would say that I'm strongly supportive of this letter. I would go so far as to say that this letter blocks local governments from bringing what I view to be bad faith CEQA actions in order to slow down and make more expensive housing developments.
Yeah, it's coming out of city of San Francisco, get that to basically weaponize CEQA to stop perfectly fine housing development. So we want to make sure that, one, they can't do that, but other cities can follow suit and try to do that.
Michael?
Move to amend RBCC.
I'll second that. It's on the floor. Noes or abstentions on removing CCs from this letter? Noes or abstentions, raise your hand. All right, it passes. Thank you. Further discussion on the letter. All right, let's move to a vote. Noes or abstentions on the letter in support of 1633? Noes or abstentions? Not seeing any hands raised. It passes. Thank you. Thank you, Constantine. Thank you.
See you next month. Hey, thank you all for having me. Thank you.
Encore.
All right, gang, we're moving right along in the agenda, final section of tonight's agenda, item 11A. As Valerie gave an update at the top of the meeting, we're nearing the end of our fiscal year. She outlined a couple of different timelines, but Valerie, can you give us a sense of our financial position?
Sure. It's, there are variables. We are definitely going, well, not definitely. We are very likely to spend all our money. As of now, we kind of have more money allotted to various things. As much as $1,300 over our budget allotted to various things. However, not all of that allotted money is likely going to be spent. So I don't think we're actually going to end up in the red. We only have another month left of committee cycle and funding cycle, so 1.5 months. Do be mindful that we are not flush when dealing with funding motions in committee. There's also a chance that, Michael has said that the community improvement project we voted to fund a long time ago, we might not have to pay for after all, because if the city doesn't do it in a timely manner, it might be their financial responsibility, not ours, in which case we have only $6,000 more, but that can just be rolled over to the next fiscal year, and otherwise provide a nice cushion for the things that we're going to spend money on. There's no budget category that is outreach and administrative are both pretty much tapped out with what we've allotted. So again, just be mindful of that. There's some extra money in elections that we'll be able to move to those, and we'll probably have to amend the budget one more time just to do that.
Any questions for Valerie? All right, then I'd like to go to our final item of business tonight, 11B, which is the funding motion. And Director Calhoun, thank you for staying on with us to the end. Discussing potential action to table at and support Kansas Civic Park's upcoming June community event in the amount of up to $500. So I'd like to make a motion. Do you want to give some context about the event?
Sure. I want to apologize for missing my part earlier. Very important I let you know. We might have to move this meeting. They're considering using our site as a shelter for the migrants that are being bused out of Texas. And Governor Abbott is sending to all the Democratic cities. So I've been on the phone for the last 2 hours trying to figure out I have to clear everything out of this building. If it happens, what we'll probably do is relocate most of the meetings to the main building. chairs for all your committee meetings for the rest of the month. Please reach out to me prior, just so we know if this is going to happen. It hasn't been decided or not, but if it does, we will be able to relocate you to the other building. Not every night, so we got to figure that out. We might have to move some meeting times to a little later. So I just want to make sure you know that.
Point of clarification, how much notice do we have to give to the general public of our meeting location?
48.
48 hours?
72 hours, Brown Act.
Yeah.
32 hours?
Brown is 48.
72.
Federal bylaws are 72 and Brown is 48.
So, 72 to be in accordance with the Brown Act. So anyways, we had talked about some alternatives at the last EC meeting, and so we're exploring those, but back to the funding.
Sorry, so I did clear the other side with empowerment.
Okay, great.
Like when we did the walkthrough for this site, I said, hey, can you check that building out too, just in case? So it is clear, we are able to move, we just have to do the burnout. So anyway, I'll let you know. And then the ribbon cutting tomorrow, the mayor will not be here, but the council wants to be postponed again for a third time. So if anyone's planning on coming to the ribbon cutting for a new playground, it has been postponed. So for tomorrow, so it's not happening again. So June 10th, we're going to have a community event. I've been really trying to work on this since I got here 5 years ago. We were going to have a music festival, art activations, kid booths. It should be, so we're partnering with Launch LA, TARFest, which was held at the LA County Museum. Because of all the construction and everything, kind of looking for a new location. And so I met the organizers of that event and decided to be a great partnership over here. I think this might be the last year it's going to be called TARFest. And then we're going to reinvent it and call it something new. So, but yeah, really looking forward to the support. We're going to have live music. We're hoping to have a beer garden. We're waiting for the approval on that. And then also look forward to having you participate in it as well with an outreach booth and help get out. You know, we get thousands of people here on the weekends, so we're hoping to have a really nice, successful event.
Thank you, Eric. And so with that, I'd like to make a motion that we approve our participation and funding of up to $500 in support of this event. Right? Second, thank you, Michael, for the second. It's on the floor. Any comments, discussion? All right, let's go then to a vote. Amanda, when you're ready.
Thomas Bailey.
Yes.
Cindy Betterman. Yes. Sam Betterman.
Yep.
Lauren Borcher.
She stepped out of the room.
She'd say yes, though.
Hunter Barbarella.
Yes.
She stepped out recently, right? Didn't it affect her?
Yeah.
She just, okay. Lindsay Chase.
Yes.
Ted Sidney.
Yep.
Chris Tower.
He said yes to him.
Also just for this one moment?
You vote yes.
All right.
She's worried about
Okay. Isaac Crowder.
Yes.
Amy Goldenberg.
Yes.
Sarah Greavy.
Yes.
Taylor Holland.
Yes.
Charlie Lambert Perkins.
Yes.
Christian Lamont.
Yes.
Linda LaRose.
Yes.
David Mann.
Yes.
Eva Marinelli.
Yes.
Lauren Nichols.
Yes.
Mark Costello is ineligible. Michael Schneider.
Yes.
Robert Shore.
Yes.
Julian Stern.
Yes.
J.T. Van Straten.
Yes.
Valerie Washburn.
Yes.
John Whitehead.
Yes.
Okay, passes 22 yeas.
Fantastic. And with that, I'd like to make a motion for us to adjourn tonight.
Second.